Before there was an LGBTQ, I was a spokesperson for LMLAC, living my life as cat. In fact, for years, I dressed as a cat for Halloween. I also had severe allergies, so much of my early life was spent as the bubble boy, with very little context of the outdoors and animals with fur, especially. I pleaded with my mother about getting a cat. She, on the other hand, was petrified. Her experiences with the feline had left her unsympathetic to my cause. After a series of allergy tests followed by years of weekly injections, I would come to grow out of it and ultimately became immune. For Christmas, I religiously asked and requested a cat. And one year, I thought I had finally lucked up, only to open a huge box with a battery-operated white Persian phony who purred when you touched its back. The quest didn't end there. My babysitter, Miss Linda, had kittens that were birthed on her porch. I was so determined that when my mother picked me up one day, I concocted a plan to scoop one of the kittens from the mother and hide it in my gym bag. I figured that I would convince her to allow for me to keep it. When she discovered my fur friend, the cat bandit was forced to return it to its mother. I have an ongoing history of experiences with animals in general, mostly always coming across abandoned animals who I tried to adopt. Around the age of 8, a beautiful woman entered my life, Olga Clark, who would become my adopted Nana. We shared the same affection for cats and kittens. Nana moved into the same apartment, and after school, it was her home where we enjoyed afternoon spreads of tea, varieties of cheese, jams, the occasional cup of coffee, and our feline friends, of course. Nana always had a cat companion. This would be the first time I experienced a mother give birth and train them to walk outdoors with a leash. When Nana moved back to Rhode Island, I anxiously looked forward to riding the Amtrak for extended visits. Naturally, throughout school, while I had aspirations to pursue many things, veterinary medicine and animal sciences were always at the top. By the time I got to college, a new world opened and other talents emerged. My English professors encouraged me to pursue that along with literature and creative writing. When I arrived to Temple after leaving College of Notre Dame, it was the same thing. I realized that college wasn't teaching me how to get money or pursue my entrepreneurial spirit. But there was a new scene of self-published writers who were taking control and living life on their own terms. I told my mother I was coming home to write a book. As I said before, I had always been one to rescue some animal who needed saving. Chi-Chi was my very first cat that I could call my own. One autumn day, we crossed paths. He was the replica of that fake box cat I had received for Christmas as a young girl. Chi-Chi was gorgeous, a Himalayan with icy blue eyes. He allowed for me to walk him on a leash, but wasn't fond of kids or other people, if I'm honest. He displayed characteristics of a dog and would spray the pants legs of strangers who got too close. The kids in the neighborhood called him the Broad Street Bully. While my mother encouraged me to return home to write my book, she knew that Chi-Chi was part of the return package. It took some time, but she got over her fear. He minded his business and she did the same. That summer, I would complete my first book and labor of love entitled Liquid Dreams and go on to pursue a career as an artist on the road. This episode of Dug Lyffe is dedicated to my origins as a dog and cat groomer, but I would later pen a memoir titled I Love 30s, where I speak on my journey of addiction to painkillers and how the healing forces of animals will bring things full circle in my life. In 2009, I faced an unexpected loss of my mother that devastated everyone in my family. She was that type of person. It rocked me to my core, but I've always been the type to hold things together, never let them see you crumble, suffer in silence. A dam will start to leak gone unchecked. And following the loss of my mom, I experienced the devastating blow of my then companion, friend, and lover who succumbed to an asthma attack. The only thing I cared about was the well-being of my fur babies and feeding this gushing hole in my heart with more painkillers to numb everything. Perk 30s had become my panacea, so much so that before I had reached my rock bottom, I was consuming on a daily 30 milligrams. Yes, you heard it, 900 milligrams of synthetic heroin. Within 6 months, I had racked up charges in almost every major county outside of Baltimore City. The one smart thing that I had done was enroll at the Baltimore School of Dog Grooming. At the time, BSDG was the oldest operating dog grooming school in North America. In my haze of pill popping and grief, I still had a love for the animals and a passion to learn. The very first day was hands-on. My instructor had a thing for the standard poodle, and I will come to understand that most dog lovers identify with a specific breed. She owned 4 and had paid $15,000 for one in particular. Miss Mary attended dog shows and fell in love with the standard, who was featured at a huge event. She confessed that she would have paid 50 bands for the mother, but instead settled for the offspring. While I was still coping with my addiction and ignoring the stages of grief, dog grooming became my therapy. It replaced that urge to remain in a pseudo-euphoric state. With pending court cases, I ultimately was forced to go to rehab. That was and still remains an unforgettable experience that you can read about in my memoir, I Love 30s. With a clean slate, starting from scratch, I had to rebuild my life. No more illegal activities, and the mandated completion of community service had kept my days full. But I still had to earn a living. Everything material had been stripped. One thing about a true hustler, she will figure out a way to rebuild. I knew from experience and education that many of the people in the surrounding community were unaware of the proper way to care for their dogs and even cats when it came to grooming and keeping their loyal companions on a schedule. I made that my focus and specialty, along with the ability to handle anxious and aggressive dogs without the use of a muzzle or chokehold. Taking dogs and cats to the vet or groomer is far from a visit to the dog park. I prided myself on the calming energy that I could offer, along with the level of confidence and compassion that is required when dealing with anxious dogs. A large majority of my clients would be blacklisted from other larger chain groomers. Reasons pointed to the fact that most training had been taught in a very assembly line approach, if that makes sense. Dog and cat grooming requires a certain frequency. Over a decade later, I can almost always anticipate a bite or scratch. I can proudly say that I have only ever turned away 5 dogs, if that. In providing services, I offer my clients an education on keeping their dogs on a 6 to 8 week schedule, sometimes 4 depending on the breed and its undercoat. These are indeed beautiful, loving creatures, friends, and there are levels to it. As with most careers, every specialist has their burnout moments. In servicing the urban community, I would and still do come across some dogs who are in such a state that grooming translates into rescue work. I have had to issue warnings that I will be forced to report the conditions of their pets if they continue to allow for their coats to mat so horribly. It hasn't been an easy road, and while it isn't as luxurious as some would imagine, I am relieved when I can free a dog from severe matting. But that is the savior complex in me, always running to the rescue of a dog in need. I want to say that I have been blessed to meet so many amazing fur friends, family. Dog grooming has given me the opportunity to have my son close to me, to allow for me to homeschool, to watch him grow and still earn a living. But there comes a time when the thing you love can also become draining. Let me say this. I know and can remember my fur babies' names quicker than their parents or owners. And the unfortunate thing about our loyal companions are their short lifespans. In the recent 2 to 3 years, I've had to bid farewell to lifelong clients. I can almost always pinpoint our last visit or one-on-ones. There's really no way to prepare for it, but I offer kind words or try to give them the most comfortable and loving advice, and have recently added on those services to assist with at-home animal hospice. I am currently taking courses to aid in prolonging the lives of our forever friends. As I said, there comes a time when you have to pivot in order to maintain the love. While I try to always stay and remain optimistic, one of the most frustrating things I have had to experience throughout my career are the doubts from the very people I've made sacrifices to educate in regards to giving them and their fur babies optimum living. You see, the dog and cat groomer is the first response or first responder before issues arise. And they're not just limited to skin or teeth, joints, but possible exterior behavior can be indication of premature aging, organ failure, and so forth. I compare it to the basic maintenance of a car before all of the lights start blinking on the dash. And some of the pictures you've seen during the slide are some extreme cases of severe matting. One of the things I've promoted since the beginning of my career is a no mat zone. The process of the hair tightening around the skin. Think of a sheep, if you will. It's literally a shearing process, and if not addressed in a timely way, can result in amputation of ears, the loss of eyes in severe cases, and overall animal cruelty, in my opinion. I can't stress enough the weekly combing of dogs and cats, regardless of length or texture. It has to be a metal comb or it won't be effective. Look forward to spending on the average $4 to $5.50 per year on grooming. Short hair not as much unless the shedding is a concern. I thank you for taking the time to watch the latest episode of Dug Lyffe. My name is Tiffany, your dog's favorite groomer and consultant. I offer a range of services and tips, including one-on-one classes, food prep, on-set animal handler for films and commercials, both foreign and domestic, and larger group training on the how-tos of humane grooming. At Dug Lyffe, this is a meeting place for people, or as I should say, ordinary people with extraordinary animals. Again, nothing but gratitude and thank you for listening. This is a place for fur, friends, family. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you soon. Later.